So we might as well start. I do want to welcome Al Benson to the team. Al, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you joining. Give credit to Rory for filling in, and Al represents Concom. They had their votes recently, and Al clearly drew the short straw to join such a fabulous team as ours. So Al, welcome. Everybody on this call that you can see their face, although I'm sure the others that you can't would also be helpful as well, but we're all at your disposal if you have questions or thoughts about past projects, current projects, to get up to speed. There's no bad time to call. I'm sure Stephanie and Wayne would also welcome a phone call as well if you wanted to learn the inner workings of the CPA, and I'd happy to take your call too.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right, so with that, we'll get started. Do you want to call into order the meeting today, dated July 14th, the Community Preservation Committee? As with all remote meeting procedures, at least as of today, we'll find out more in the days to come, in keeping with an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency as amended by Governor Baker on February 12th of 2022. This meeting is going to be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board commission members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count toward quorum. This meeting may be broadcast live and certainly will be recorded on ECAT. So welcome, Joe from ECAT. Appreciate that. We have a good agenda. I think as everybody remembers, we tried to lay it out. We'll have our normal course of business regarding minutes discussion. We do have to have a committee reorganization if necessary for a chair and vice chair. We then have our applications that are related to recreation. So that has us reviewing the letters of interest for the Oliver Ames High School basketball courts and tennis courts. And I see the world famous David Twombly has joined us to discuss those. And then we also have the Richardson Olmsted School playground. The equally world famous Chris Getchell has joined us for that. Thank you both in advance for taking time to join us today. It will just help us if we have questions. We do have a discussion on the Pond Street Island appraisal. And for that discussion, Stephanie or Wayne, I'm sure you'll have the materials that we'll need to present or the fact pattern to update the team with. An update or lack thereof in terms of an update on in-person board meetings. And then lastly, if we need it in executive session, which I don't foresee us needing. So with that, we'll dive right in. Hopefully everybody received the handy dandy singular form packet from the team. It was included in their minutes for our last meeting for the regular session dated June 9th. I would make a recommendation that we not release any executive session minutes. The fact pattern for those still holds that there are confidential topics in those minutes. Now, but if anybody would like to make a motion to accept our June 9th regular session minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Appreciate y'all clicking in there. I was like, I thought I lost internet and I was wondering for how long I had been talking. All right, so who was that first? John?
Nope. No, it's Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda. I have not in any way insinuating your voice sounds like John's, and Ed was a second. All right, committee reorganization. So for chair and vice chair, I can't speak for Greg, but I think it's an honor and would humbly.
Don't we need to vote on those?
We do. So we do need to vote on them, but I just wanted to let you know that I would continue to serve. I can't speak for Greg.
About the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, on the minutes. Got it. Sorry.
He's so eager to be reappointed. Look at that.
Right? So let's take a vote on the minutes. Thanks for keeping me honest. Mr. Lee's not here. Greg?
I'll abstain since I wasn't there.
Understood. Al?
Ensign abstain.
Ed?
Ed votes yes.
Dennis?
Sheedy votes yes.
John?
I abstain also. I was not in attendance.
Amanda?
Varela, aye.
And Broussard is an aye. On the record keeping, does that give us enough ayes to carry the vote? 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'll change my abstain and vote if
that would be helpful.
And I believe that people can vote to accept minutes.
Yeah,
if
yeah,
we
you can. I
actually
just,
reviewed them.
I didn't think the vote was going to be needed, but so I'll vote in favor.
Appreciate
Strange.
that, Greg. All right, now moving on to the next line of business, which also does require a vote. So I would be happy to continue to serve if you'd have me. And I just wanted to see if Greg would also be willing to continue to serve. If we'd have him.
I would be happy as well, but I certainly don't want to keep anybody else from the such a prestigious position.
Motion to move slate as stated.
Second.
All right, so that's Ventresco and Varela. We'll go around and vote again. Strange,
Strange eye.
Al,
Abstain.
Mr. Hands,
Hands votes aye.
Dennis,
Sheedy, aye.
John,
Ventresco, aye.
Amanda,
Varela, I.
and Broussard is an aye as well. I appreciate that support. Thank you all. And
Thank
Greg,
you all.
Next up, so we have our letters of interest for everybody. As a reminder of the process we're working on, we'll be looking at the letters of interest from Recreation this month. And our thought process is that we would then give feedback live in this case, that we would be receptive to a full outright application and going through that process. And then next month is all the other letters of interest for review. Similar process with the exception of Oak Ames Memorial Hall, which will be in September, again, discussion of letters of interest. So with that, the first two items, I believe, if Mr. Twombly, you want to illuminate yourself if you want to, or if we can help him do that. Good to see you, Dave. It's been too long.
How's it going, Tom? Nice seeing you.
Right. Good to see you too, sir. Been a long time since we were bringing pizza to our planning
Yeah,
meetings.
that's right. You brought the pizza. That's right. That was good.
Right. So we have two letters of interest before us, and I think it would be great if we want to start with the basketball courts, or to the extent that they blend together, the tennis courts. David, if you could just walk us through your letters of interest, the application, what your thought process is, and certainly team, if we have any questions for David, that would be helpful as well.
Okay, so I have a PowerPoint presentation, which I'll actually try to load this up. I actually have Chris on the on-deck circle, just in case I can't do it, but I think I'm pretty confident I can do it. And I'll kind of walk you through the PowerPoint. And then if Chris wants to jump in periodically and kind of add his 2 cents, but at the end of the PowerPoint presentation, Chris can kind of talk about some of the challenges and what he's looking to do over at the Richardson Olmsted School. So with that, I'll try to share my screen. Oh, there we go. Very good. All right. You guys see that?
Yeah, perfect.
All right. So let's see here. So with that, I'll start with the basketball court. So not too much really overall has changed since we last met. I think the last time we met was either January or February. And at the time, Bill Matthews was the athletic director. We now have a new athletic director, not Greg Swan, but Ryan Gordy. And he actually couldn't make the meeting tonight. So really, you probably have seen some of these photographs, and it's pretty much a replay of what the basketball in the tennis courts look like. The tennis courts are really in tough shape. Obviously, we use those for all of Rame's varsity athletics. We did put an estimate on that. It says cost estimate of $350,000 for the basketball, for the tennis courts, and $275,000 for the basketball court. I don't like to usually give estimates because obviously we haven't gone out to bid, and with the with such a crunch on supplies and stuff like that, the supply chain, you never know. It could be a lot more than that. So I'd rather try to stay away from that. But we have done some remedial work periodically on the tennis courts, but obviously it's not working. I think about 5 or 6 years ago, we had a company come out and they fixed some of the cracks, but the cracks are starting to show through again. And it's really starting to hamper the tennis matches that are out there, specifically the Oliver Ames high school tennis matches. I will tell you that on Thursday, July 21st, I have a meeting with Greg Swan, who works at the DPW. I'm going to be working with him, and I'm going to be working with Ryan Gordy. He's the athletic director. We're going to meet on site and kind of walk the tennis courts, walk the basketball courts. If I had to prioritize one of them, I would say the tennis courts. But I do think as far as, if you were to do both of them at the same time, I think you might save money as far as setting up, having a company come out and have to set up twice. So I do think there's some synergy there if you were to do both of them at the same time. Again, we could go out to bid and do like an ad alternate. So have the tennis courts as the focus bid and then get an ad alternate price on the basketball courts. And if it met your financial criteria or abilities or whatever, then we could do both. So I think that's something we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get there. So that's pretty much where we are with the tennis courts. Again, I think after Thursday, I'll have a lot more information. But I think that Greg Swan, the reason why we're working with him, if I remember correctly, he actually was the person who put together the bid documents for the tennis courts on the town side. So I think we would follow those very similar bid documents and have him kind of help us put all those together, go out to bid. When I'm envisioning, and this, I'll get a little bit into this when we talk about the Richardson Olmsted Playground. But as far as the timeline goes, I think we would probably follow a very similar timeline. What I think we would do is try to get the design work done over the fall, and then perhaps in January. And again, I don't know your timeline, so I'm just kind of throwing stuff out here. We would probably go out to bid maybe sometime in January, get the pricing from various vendors, construction companies. And then when we went to town meeting, we'd actually have a real number. I'd rather get into town meeting with a number that's real versus like saying, oh, well, I estimate it's going to be 350 or something. And then we get the bids in and all of a sudden, I'm sure you guys have encountered this recently. All of a sudden, the bid's like $200,000 more or something because of the supply chain or whatever other factors. So I think that's kind of how we'd like to proceed. But again, I'm willing to, listen to you guys, get feedback, follow your timeline, but that's just something that we were thinking off the cuff. So I'll go through the entire PowerPoint, and then at the end, I'll field questions and I'll let Chris say a few words at the end. And also when we get to the Richardson Olmsted slides, he can kind of pipe in with some comments also. So going over to the Richardson Olmsted Playground, if you remember back in January or February, we had come to you. I think we were looking for funds to help pay for the design of the upgrades to the Richardson Olmsted Playground. However, through our budget, we were able to cobble together some money. We actually hired Perkins Eastman and Traverse Landscaping. So Perkins Eastman is the architectural firm on the Blanche James School. Traverse Landscaping is a subcontractor with Perkins Eastman who's doing the landscaping at the Blanche James Elementary School. So we'd like to make the site contiguous because both sites abut each other. We thought it would be a good idea to have the same landscape architect. That way it would be kind of the same design all the way through from the brand new Blanche James Early Elementary School over to the Richardson Olmsted School. Obviously, the things that they're going to have to look at is ADA compliance, safety, other options as far as student engagement, which we'll be getting a lot of feedback from staff, nurses, the phys ed teacher, obviously the leadership team, whether it's the principals. And this would also be the principal at the middle school. He'll be a little bit involved with this because, again, this playground's going to abut basically three school buildings, the middle school, Richardson, obviously, and the Blanche James School. So Traverse Landscaping, they'll be providing us with schematic design, which is, we're going to be going through that over the next 2 or 3 months. Construction documents, bidding, obviously, so we can go out to bid. And they'll also do construction administration. They'll oversee the project. They'll come out periodically. And then we'll have a closeout. They'll have a punch list. They'll make sure that everything was done up to what their specifications were. So this is the tentative timeline. So again, I don't know your timeline. I may be getting way out ahead of myself, but I just wanted to put this out there. So our first meeting with Traverse Landscaping is scheduled for July 26th. Ashley from Traverse Landscaping and somebody from Perkins Eastman will be there. In addition, we're going to have representatives from the fire department, the police department, DPW, Billy Casey in particular, who does a lot of the landscaping for the school department. He'll be there. We're going to have a few administrators. Dr. Cabral will be there. Obviously, Chris Getchell, myself, and probably Luke Carroll, the principal of the middle school, and also one of our phys ed teachers. She'll also be out there to give us feedback. We're just going to really walk the site if anybody's available and they'd like to attend the meeting, if Stephanie'd like to come or Wayne, certainly just let me know and you guys can meet us over there. I forget the time of the meeting, but I can send you a calendar reminder. Then we're going to have a second meeting. The second meeting is going to be sometime in August, again with Traverse. And we're going to have the administrative team and some of our staff, teachers, principal. We're also going to have our nurses are going to be there. And we're going to have a meeting to kind of go over kind of like what the thoughts are from the staff, like what their desires are and what they're kind of looking for from a programmatic standpoint and what kind of themes that the school may be looking at. Then there's also going to be a meeting in September, again, with Traverse and Perkins Eastman. But this will also include some of the parents. So like the PTA, because we want to get feedback from the parents and what their vision is and really take everybody, get as much information from as many people, as many stakeholders as possible, so that when Traverse leaves there to start doing the design work from like September to like November or so, they have a clear vision of what people are looking for. And then when they come back in November to present to the committee or to the schools, we can say, yeah, that's exactly what we wanted, or we can make a couple of tweaks. So again, as it says here on the bottom, there'll be a presentation, hopefully a design sometime in November. Again, this is very tentative. We haven't met with Traverse in a couple of weeks, so they haven't provided us with their timeline, but we did have a meeting with them probably about a month ago or whatever. And we kind of kicked around different ideas, but this was kind of the one that we kind of stuck with. We would also do construction documents, like again, in January, have the construction documents, the bid documents ready to hit the street. We would have bid proposals possibly due sometime in March. Review all those, get the bids in, and then go to town meeting. I guess that would be in May of 23. We would be seeking funding for the construction of the upgrade to the Richardson Olmsted Playground. And then we would hopefully start construction next summer if everything came together. So with that, I will kind of turn it over to Chris. I know I've been kind of long-winded here. We'll turn it over to Chris, let him say a few words. And then if folks have some questions, whether it's about the basketball and tennis courts or about the Richardson Olmsted Playground, we certainly would be willing to entertain those. So Chris, do you want to add anything that I skipped?
Thank you, David, and thank you everybody for having us tonight. Just to reiterate, obviously the condition of the playground is deteriorating. There's cracks throughout the both sides of the playground. There's very little grass for the kids to play on, so it's all blacktop. We don't have things like swings and a field for the kids like where you typically have for recess. The other challenge we have is that our playground is actually divided in half. We have the Richardson side and the Olmsted side, and the whole gymnasium divides both playgrounds. So, and the Olmsted side is right up against the middle school. So one of the problems we always have is when our kids go out to recess, they by nature of there being 750 kids out there for 2 hours at a time in shifts, it can be disruptive to the middle school. So in thinking of this design, we really want to create a variety of spaces in our design. We want active grass spaces where kids can run around and be loud. We also want quiet spaces where classes can go out and learn outside and maybe not be as disruptive to neighboring schools. So there's going to be a lot of thought put into this design. And I think it would serve the children of Easton well. I mean, we have 750 students at our school. The middle school students, another approximately 800 students would have access to this space. So we're talking about 1,600 kids accessing this space every day. So and not to mention the community at large when school's not in session. So I feel like it's a really important project that it could really positively impact the town. I also would like to just add, being with kids these last few years and seeing the impact that COVID had just on their social skills and their ability to play with one another. It might sound strange to you all, as it did to me. Playing with kids was a natural part of my growing up. I went outside every day after school and played, but it's not the same for kids now. It's a real challenge. And I feel like recess plays a more important role than ever, because it's really one of the few times where kids have unstructured time to play and move and be with other kids and be off the screens. if you're around kids these days, you'd probably know how much time they spend staring at screens. And for developing minds, that's not always the most healthy thing. I believe kids by nature should be moving a lot. So I feel like the playground, it plays a very important role in the physical and emotional development of kids. So this is more to me than just simply, replacing the blacktop and putting some swings in. This is going to serve a real need of our Easton's youth right now. So I appreciate your time and your service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you both. That was fantastic stage setting. I will share my screen just in case anybody, as we on the committee have dialogue. This is hopefully everybody can see my screen, and this is the RO building. And Chris, I think we're talking about the combination or the fact that we have one playground on the south side as this is oriented and one on the north side here. And so one of the general questions I have is it would encompass, we're talking all of the areas on where the cursor is moving on the top and then the area down the bottom.
Yes, that's correct.
Got it. All right, I'll step back. I think first of all, from our committee's perspective, we've had a good long history of working to support the schools. Mr. Hands was kind enough to educate us that one of the first projects we actually approved with CPC monies or CPA monies, or if not the first, was part of I think it was the play sets, Ed?
Yep.
At RO. So that speaks to how long we've been engaged. And certainly there's been other projects with the schools since, whether it was the field or so on and so forth, that we've supported. So first of all, I appreciate you thanked us, but we are very appreciative of what you do each and every day to support the kids in our community and the educational establishment. So deeply appreciate that. I'll pass the mic a little bit just to, again, team, this is the letter of interest phase. So this is us acknowledging that we would be receptive to considering an application. It doesn't mean that we would vote on that application and approve all applications. I think, as you all know, that we have a finite amount of resources that we have to consider, and there are many applications this year, which is an excellent thing. But what we want to do is to make sure we can give every letter of interest the right due consideration and every application a thoughtful review, so that if we have to get to a point where we say yays and nays, we can do so in a thoughtful manner. So team, with that said, I would certainly open it up for you folks to have questions before I circle back at the end with David and Chris.
I have a question about the tennis and basketball, well, tennis courts in particular. Given the direction that asphalt prices have been moving with oil prices, have we considered other surfaces? Obviously not putting clay courts, but concrete or something like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think we had talked about that maybe in February or January or whatever. And I think the alternate surface that, and I can't remember the name of the surface right now, but again, that could be an ad alternate, but this other surface that was mentioned, that's actually a little bit more money than the asphalt. I can't remember the name of the surface right now, but I know Bill Matthews was really interested in that particular surface. But then when we discussed it, it was like almost like double the price. So I think that we kind of backed away from that. So then we're just going to go with the typical asphalt surface. But again, we're going to meet with Greg Swan from the DPW and have a discussion with him on Thursday, walk the courts and talk to the athletic director and get some sense of which direction we want to go.
Just my light Googling on the dramatic increase in asphalt costs. That may not be the case anymore. And
that's something to be looked at.
Maybe lower maintenance costs and have a longer life. So I would prefer that the committee spend more money on something that's going to last 20 or 30 years with basic maintenance than something that you're having to pour money into every year, ceiling cracks and things like that, just because it's the cheapest to do it.
No, you're absolutely right. The alternate surfacing, if we went that direction, it does last longer than the asphalt. So you're absolutely right about that. It's just a lot of money up front. So it's kind of like paying.
And but
now,
I'm just
paying
thinking,
later.
it may not be that much more money,
Exactly. Yeah.
given oil prices.
That's a good point, Amanda.
Point well taken. Good idea.
The painful experience of replacing a driveway during a time of heightened oil prices once upon a time. So it's stuck with me.
Stephanie, I think you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I just did a Google search and the name of that surface is a post-tension concrete course.
That's exactly what it is. That's the
Yeah.
one. Yep.
That's what they
And frankly,
did-
maybe
they did
more
that at Frothingham
environmentally
Park.
friendly.
That's the basketball court at Frothingham Park, absolutely.
Yeah, and the tennis court, as I understand it, at Frothingham too, and it's supposed, someone just told me, so they're supposed to last over 25 years before they need repair. The firm that was putting it in said that they've had courts for 25 years. That's how long they had been doing them. They hadn't made a repair. Someone recently told me that they were at one of these courts that was over 30 years old and needed no repair.
Wow.
Just keep in mind, it's quite a bit more involved engineering wise and subsurface. You know, you
Yeah.
can't, it's not a miracle. These courts all react based on what's underneath them. We're in New England, we have to deal with frost heaves. So asphalt does well with that, but doesn't last as long. But to put in a post tension system, you're gonna have to do coring tests, and you may be taking out 4, 5, 6 feet of material depending on what's under there.
Fair points.
I actually have a question.
Please.
Dave and Chris, you did an excellent job in presenting your case for this application. Historically, has the schools had a budget for things like this? And have they ever added anything from their budget? And is this going to be an ongoing, just say we approve all of this, what's going to happen down the road as far as maintaining? So again, first question, historically, has there been a budget for this in the schools?
Yeah, so we do have a maintenance budget. As you may know, we have a combined maintenance program with the Department of Public Works. So Billy Casey, who's kind of like the town landscaper, he kind of oversees a lot of our fields. We have beautiful playing fields over at Oliver Ames High School. He does a magnificent job over there. We also rent out some of our facilities. And those we have like a revolving account, and those funds are reinvested into our athletic fields. And like we talked about earlier with the tennis courts in particular, we did probably like 6 or 8 years ago, whatever it was, we did do some repairs to the cracks, but they're starting to come right through now. So I think we really need to probably do something a little bit more long-term. And I like the post-tension concrete idea. I just get a little bit concerned about the money. But again, like I said earlier, we could also do an ad alternate on, give us a cost on an asphalt tennis court and give us a cost on a post-tension concrete tennis court, and then kind of decide based on what it's going to cost.
Oh, yeah.
But we definitely do maintenance. I mean, I don't know if Kristen wants to elaborate on some of the maintenance that goes on over at the school in general, but we do a lot of maintenance in the schools. We put new roofs on over at Moreau Hall. I think about 6 years ago, a new roof went on Moreau Hall. I think maybe about 5 years ago, we did the middle school gymnasium roof. Obviously, we're building a brand new school. There's brand new fields, playing fields over at Oliver Ames High School. The synthetic turf was replaced 3 years ago. We also put a new elevator, a lift up to the press box. We've done a ton of work over at the Moscato Stadium. So
what about capital funding within the school budget for projects like this?
yeah, well, we haven't done too much on the exterior as far as like I'm trying to think of. Well, I think with Moscato Stadium, that was a big capital project.
John, I think just having, don't think I'm crazy, but just in perusing the capital budget in the past, I called it up because something stood out to me. I was looking at our 2022 capital planning project, and it's a comprehensive document. If you just Google it online, you can find it on the town website. But the schools, for example, focused the spend focused on the schools was for fitness center leak repair, entrance security improvements, And the town, supported DPW, fire, police with some of the other spend, specifically an engine happened to have been the largest in that one. And so that comprised roughly $2 million worth of spend. But the important aspect, I think, or to add more color probably to your question, is there is a 5-year plan that's out there. And the school has a lot of items on it. But also they do have these particular items on that list as well in future years. And where I'm going with it is, it seems to me that we're, from a capital perspective, really handling some of the critical aspects like entrance security and the fitness center leak for the spend in 2022. And that perhaps items like this might continue to get pushed in years out as other critical items come into play. I won't pretend to be an expert on the full document, but I think that might give some color as to, I think they consider it. I think they plan for it. I'm just not sure that they have the capacity in the town with its current capital structure has the capacity to execute those against other things like front entrance security and critical leak capital repairs type things.
I second what Tom said. You said it perfectly, Tom. Yeah, I mean, there's competing interest for funding. So obviously we go to the capital for certain things, mostly with building maintenance type of things. We go to capital periodically for the fields. Like I said, we talked about the lights over at Moscato Stadium. They were replaced a few years ago. We replaced the Moscato Stadium surface, playing surface. So yeah, we go to different pots of money, trying to cobble together the best we can and maximize funding that we get. And this is one way of getting these fields, getting the playground upgraded, and do some work to the tennis courts and the basketball courts.
Well, you answered that. And I reiterate about the recess and how important that is today that Chris had mentioned, especially when everybody's on tablets, just to get out there and play. So important. I bring up my concern only because I think we're all concerned on this board with the cost because of what's going on in our country right at the moment. That if we couldn't fund all of this, just say, as you mentioned tonight, this is an exploratory. Is there any other way that you could get, just say, I mean, you're at approximately $600,000. Just say the CPA said, okay, we can give you 400,000. Is there some way of another vehicle to go after where you could get another 100 or 200? And that's 600 that where I think it was 575 to combine, but let's just, for argument's sake, 600. But who knows? It could go to 800 or 900,000, as you mentioned. It's scary on these costs. So it's just something that I'm just curious. As I said,
I think that's an excellent question, and I think I don't want to speak for Chris, but I mean, there's different. We could go back to capital. If we got, I'm just making this number up. If we got $400,000 from the CPA, and then we had to go to capital, get so many dollars, there may be monies that the PTA may have. So there's different pots of money that we could go to if it came down to that. Obviously, we'd like to just go to one pot and just kind of deal with you guys. And we appreciate all the hard work you guys and do for the town and for the school department. We certainly recognize that. And, money is tight, and trying to spread it all around and use it the best way we all can. So it's just, there's a finite amount of money and there's a lot of projects. I totally get that.
Our PTA,
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Oh, certainly, Greg.
So I'm wondering, I don't know if I misread this, but I see on the, do we have any, I'm assuming they'll be coming back looking for construction money on the playground? Not, is there no, I see the design and administration. Did I miss something?
Yeah, so basically, just sort of clarify, I think I had mentioned this earlier. Back in January, we had come in to meet with you, and we discussed the possibility of having the CPA committee fund the design. So this is actually a good example, and it kind of ties into John's question. We actually funded the design part of this project already. We're funding that through our own budget. So now what we're looking from the CPA committee, if we were to do the Richardson Olmsted playground, we would look to you to help us fund the actual construction of the playground. So we're going to pay for the design. We have the architect on board. We're going to have them design it. hopefully come back in November with a design of the playground, bring it to the leadership team and the teachers and the nurses and get feedback, and then go out to bid sometime in January, and then get those bids back sometime in March, so that when we do go to town meeting, we have an actual number of how much it's going to cost to do the Richardson Olmsted playground. So that's
Right, so I guess maybe, so my question is, what is, I mean, you must have a ballpark number in mind. What is that? And are you looking for the whole thing from this committee?
Right now, I think the letter of interest asks for $153,500.
Wasn't
Yeah,
that for
I think you probably
the, I
have to
thought,
read
wasn't
that
that for
letter.
the old design? Maybe I misunderstood something.
It has bidding and construction added onto it. So I just don't know if the value is appropriate.
Yeah, so basically it was 153 was for the design. So again,
Right.
we're going to pay for that. So this part, we would just be looking for construction. So I don't know.
Right, but what's that
is.
number? That's what I'm asking. What's that construction number?
haven't
I
gone-
know you don't know it yet, but you must have a ballpark. You must be working with designers saying we have to stay within a certain parameter.
No, we haven't even got to that.
Okay.
We only got into meetings right now.
Okay.
We had one meeting.
So I want to just being an old timer on this board, I just want to kind of dovetail a little bit with I think with what John was talking, or follow up. And I think back when CPA first came out, maintenance items weren't even allowed, and stadium wasn't even allowed. And I get it. Towns never have enough money. Or I see what happens in this town. Folks look and they say, "Wow, look at that big chunk of change that CPA has," and I understand it. People are always, there's never enough money. I guess my concern is, I remember a few years ago we added a town position, and Ed, I remember Ed, a few remember, and Lee. Wait, why are we paying for this? Why isn't this coming out of some other funds? And once we kicked and screamed enough, that was taken away, and we weren't funding it. And we, so we participated in the resurfacing of the Moscato field, and then we did and way back, I know we did CPA did the playground at Olmsted Richardson when it was first out.
We also did the new
I-
field next to Randall Street.
Yeah, and then we did the practice fields, and then we kicked in another, whatever, 100 or 200 grand. And I guess just, remember our dear friend Lee, when he was still with us, used to talk about free money. Well, those days of free money are long gone. If we stop bonding, we're not going to be at the free money rates anymore. And we know we have some big ticket items that I don't think the town's not going to allow us to do. And we already have a pretty solid commitment on an annual basis to the Affordable Housing Trust. And I just had asked the folks to think going forward, how much of is CPA going to become just a codicil, if you will, to capital funding, capital planning. And maybe I'm an old timer, maybe it's changing, but we've always talked about priority parcels and other things, and we're not going to have that much money going forward. We're not going to be able to bond everything. And sounds like we got probably $2 million we're going to be looking to do on fields this year, and it just seems things that used to be part of a capital budget, or used to be part of a larger construction budget for new schools, is, hey, go to CPA, they have a lot. And I just, we should be aware of that trend, and if we're going to go that way, then we probably need to start to adjust some of our priorities, and we should be open to the townspeople about that. So that's all I have to say.
Could I weigh in here too, as another one of those old timers? I think Greg has an excellent point, and it all goes back to promises that were made about that football field that weren't kept. And then we had to pay for the resurfacing of it after we had been promised that the school department would budget enough to replace it when its useful life was over. And that was, I feel, very irresponsible. However, that I disagree here to the degree, having read the letters. Unlike the football field, which has a lot of school department use, these tennis courts and the basketball courts do have public use. So it is a recreation department kind of a thing. I went to the community preservation website today and found out that while maintenance work is still forbidden, the fact that the school department has done their best to maintain these asphalt fields for a few years, patching the cracks, et cetera, put this request into a category of rehabilitation and not maintenance. So it's a legitimate thing to fund, whether we have the money for it or not. And my only concern with the presentation was, and now it turns into a positive, was we had an instance once where the VFW wanted to replace a historic door on their hall and was going to get CTA money. No problem. It wasn't a lot of money, et cetera, but they went and did the job and paid for it. And once that happened, we couldn't cover them under CPA. So be careful with your schedule that you don't get out ahead of yourself and make payments that we therefore can't cover. However, it sounds like you guys are covering the design work and at a fairly substantial rate. And that's something that CPA has generally looked favorably upon because, you know, it shows effort and commitment. And I think that's a real positive.
If I could add on to that, I do think the playgrounds at almost all of the schools are also used by the community outside of school hours. RO is probably an exception because it's terrible. So I think if there were a new unified playground there with a different surface, I do think it would get a lot of community use as well.
Just a question to Chris, you have sort of a track record with landscaping and agricultural experiments for your kids. Are you going to factor some of that into that quiet area? And if so, the Agricultural Commission would definitely like to help you with that.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. Yes, absolutely. I mean, we intend, this is a pretty large space, as you saw on the picture, particularly the space adjacent to the middle school. We really would like to make that more of an outdoor classroom environment where the intent of the use would be outdoor learning, including gardens, but also just spaces for kids to get outside, out of the classroom and read and write. And, you know, the possibilities are endless. So yes, to answer your question, that would factor in for sure. And I just want to reiterate, I mean, to John's original question, and this was brought up by another committee member. I think that differentiates this project of other capital projects because, as you said, this space could be accessible to the entire town at all times, versus things like retiling the floor or putting HVAC systems on, you know, the tops of schools. Those aren't really accessible things to the public. So I feel like that piece of it does differentiate this a bit. And I've also reached out to our PTA. As you know, we have a very strong, active parent community. Always been very supportive of our schools, and I know for sure that our PTA is focused on this project, and we plan to do a lot of direct fundraising to supplement a lot of the costs. So I feel like certainly, you know, a fraction of this would be directly paid by the families of the students who will use this every day.
Great. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
We've heard all three presentations now. Is a motion in order to have them carry forward to the next step in planning?
Sure. Just one quick moment before we pass on. I do want to just offer a little bit of time in case Al or Dennis had comments that they wanted to voice. So just ask if anybody else has comments.
I'm good, thank you.
All right. Hearing none. Team, thank you for all the thoughtful questions. You touched on the notes that I had, I think with the exception of one. First, just understanding the dynamic of public use versus just school use. Two was the emphasis that was placed, and I appreciate reciprocated already regarding fundraising and partnership. So part of having you join us today is to begin this process in that vein. And actually, we look very favorably. It's part of our priorities listed on our CPA website of finding partners who are looking to carry the load. And that could certainly be in forms such as fundraising, certainly community engagement. So making sure that we are reaching out, setting up information sessions, and bringing the community along the journey as well. So David, I think you hit the nail on the head with your calendar already. Credit to Ed for making sure we sync on that. So I look forward to talking with you more. And Chris, you hit the nail on the head from a PTA perspective. So I appreciative you folks are already thinking of that as well. The one item that I didn't hear, or I just wanted to ask a little bit more about, and specifically as it relates to the basketball courts, to the tennis courts, the project, speaking a little bit along the lines of where Amanda was going, this project isn't just for the base foundation. If, for example, the fencing around it is all shredded, torn, poles are bent, paint's chipping, bleachers are hazards. Like, what we're thinking about is I'm asking, are you thinking about the entire environment there holistically, or is this literally just the asphalt and the baskets are going to be from 1985, for example? And I'm exaggerating the case.
I think it's the all-inclusive, the entire courts. The fence is somewhat old over there. If you look at it, I'm not sure if there's bleachers over there. I'm not sure what size those bleachers are that are over there, but we just bought a bunch of new bleachers back in the spring. So I think we've already covered that. We've had those wooden bleachers. You're probably familiar with those. They're at when graduation occurs, we have these big wooden bleachers. We've been slowly replacing those. So this past spring, we purchased 3 new aluminum bleacher, big, huge ones that are going to replace 3 of those wooden ones. But anyways, yeah, it would be an all-inclusive project. Obviously, I totally get it as far as the funding. I mean, you guys don't have endless amounts of money. Nobody does. So we're going to have to kind of work with you guys. And like I said earlier, we're going to have to cobble together, whether it's Chris working with the PTA or perhaps the school department or going to the capital fund, just looking at various means to kind of bring all the money together. I think that's going to really, sounds like that's the direction we're going to have to go. We're going to have to kind of all work together and try to cobble together the money. So, but again, I think this would be an all-inclusive project. When we get the bids in, we certainly could take things out. I'm sure that whoever's going to bid on it, they would say it will cost X amount of dollars for the resurfacing, X amount of dollars for fencing. And if there's things that we have to peel off due to cost, then we can't do those particular things. But I think we go in with everything, get the price, and then kind of make a decision from there.
And, I do want to just emphasize, I'm not looking to add just to add, but along the vein of what Amanda recommended, I wouldn't want us to be penny wise and pound foolish and just have you come back and talk about fencing next year, or.
No, that's a very good point.
If that makes sense. So to get the full value of what we may consider, if there are other things that need to do that to bring that full value to life, that would be thoughtful, at least from my perspective. The business side of me is always trying to maximize the ROI while we're here. And I'll just close with, before throwing it to a vote, I think Greg had a great point. The one thing I would lead with is everybody who has a project that they feel applies to the CPC should feel welcome to submit a letter of interest. And that's okay. And we don't ever want to disincentivize that. But Greg's point is valid, that it is a finite resource. And eventually, I think, Greg, what it will mean is we'll have to be more judicious. Good job. Outreach is good. More projects are coming in. They apply to our what we're tasked with doing. But that also just means we have to be thoughtful and considerate and judicious, given what we know is the pipeline for projects. So not hearing any other reasons not to, Mr. Ahrens, I think you're spot on. I would definitely take a motion to recommend to the submittals of the letters of interest for these 3 projects to recommend that they proceed to the full application phase. And again, that doesn't mean that would garner our support of it. It just means that it takes it to the next level and puts it through to the next consideration point. that
So
a fair way to
moved.
say it, Ed?
Yep, that's perfect.
Or a minor correction on a draft application. The process envisions a draft application, working with staff, and then you have a near complete draft to actually consider before inviting the full final application. The idea being that so many projects will still have some outstanding stuff towards the end.
Well said. So I amend my previous statement to include the word draft application to keeping with the process as outlined. Thanks for keeping us honest, Wayne. And I think Ed moved.
I did.
Second, Sheedy.
Second, Sheedy, perfect. And going through, let's see, Greg Strange,
And Jai.
Al Benson,
Aye.
Ed Hands,
Aye.
Dennis Sheedy,
Sheedy, aye.
John Francesco,
I,
Amanda Varela,
Varela, I.
Tom Broussard is an aye. So, Mr. Getchell, Mr. Twombly, thank you again for taking time out of your probably long day. Hopefully you're enjoying just a little bit of the summer along the way. And we really appreciate all your efforts and thoughtfulness today with the presentation. And we look forward to working with you and your draft applications in the future.
Well, thanks a lot, everybody. I know you guys are taking time away from your families, and we certainly appreciate all the time and effort that you put in to the community and to being on this committee. And we certainly take your comments seriously, and we're definitely willing to work together. So thanks a lot.
thank you.
Thank
I
you.
second that. Thank you all for your service in the town. Much appreciated.
Thank you both as well. Perfect.
Great night, everybody.
You too.
Bye.
All right. Next up is Pond Street and Island appraisal discussion. Stephanie or Wayne, do you folks mind calling that up and giving us an update on that?
Just had that. So this was really just to share the appraisal, what the property appraised at. And I did just have this open. It seems I closed the wrong file. Here we go. So the appraisal for the remaining value of the land. Let's see, it's the value of the fee interest is further, let's see. So the value of the conservation restriction. So basically what he says is the underlying value of the property is $600,000, that the market value of the property after the imposition of the preservation, or I'm sorry, the conservation restriction reduces that value to $130,000, which means that the conservation restriction itself is valued at $470,000.
Okay. Greg, any thoughts?
Just another great job done by Greg Strange. No.
Yeah,
Hey, listen,
We
pal,
came
don't-
in under the numbers. I'm teasing. No, that all worked. Any thoughts is I wish, I have to be careful, we're on TV. I just wish everything would wrap up.
Sure.
And I don't mean on our end.
Well, again, appreciate the update, Stephanie, Greg. Good summary. Don't pull a muscle patting yourself in the back. I don't want you to hurt anything that you just.
I can't reach that far anymore, so.
Team, does anybody have any questions just on that update? I thought it was important to bring that up, and I appreciate you, Stephanie, raising that.
Yeah, have the conservation planner, Jennifer, had a chance to take a look at this? Because it's an island. I think a lot of the property may be, eliminated for construction, including even a dock, according to the town wetland bylaws. So I don't know where that stands, but.
No, I'm not sure I follow, but I think that's maybe old plans when it may have gone in a private way, but from what we're envisioning now, that would not be the case.
right. The intent of purchasing the land is to preserve it. Greg, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the things that have been discussed, like I think the minimum that might be installed on the site might be interpretive signage. recognizing its historic, its history as the Shovel Works original site.
Yeah, Al, just a quick update. There was a plan approved about 10 years ago from your board and planning for a couple lots that has expired, and the
All right.
Ames family is looking to preserve this. So we've put a deal together between the town of Easton, the trustees of the reservation who own the Governor Ames estate, and the Ames family, where trustees will purchase it and from the Ames, and then town of Easton will pay $350,000 for a preservation restriction, where the Gale, it's going to stay in its natural state. And as Stephanie said, there may be, through the years, there may be some interpretive signage, or if, there's nothing that keeps, there are portions of that land that, trustees could in the future maybe want to do something with, but obviously it would go through all of the pertinent bylaws. And there's nothing on their radar for that right now. They have a large capital campaign planned, but that's all centered around the existing carriage house and the house foundation, because they're going to be demolishing the house.
Yeah,
So-
and just for Al's edification and any of the other members, because I don't know that we've talked in full detail about what happens next, but once the formal purchase is completed between the trustees and the Ames family, the trustees of reservations will draft a conservation restriction that will come to the town through the CPC that will be reviewed. It will be reviewed by the committee members and commented on. It will certainly, as the representative to the Conservation Commission, we would suggest input, and then it gets reviewed by town council before it actually gets submitted. Thereabouts, I'm pretty much on the mark, Wayne. And I think it, until it actually gets approved by the DCR, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, that we don't actually cut the check for the CR.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Update on in-person board meetings. In short, what I have heard is that in the Massachusetts State Senate, Massachusetts House, that everybody has acknowledged that we need to think in a new way in this world and keep some semblance of remote, hybrid, in-person meetings. That has not been decided yet. So the advice that we have, I have received recently, legislature has not yet taken action on the extension of remote meetings that expires on Friday, July 15th. We continue to believe, however, that the ability to conduct remote meetings will be extended in the coming weeks, but we are uncertain as to when the legislature will finalize this. So what is recommended for Easton boards and committees? 1, practice the pause. If your board business can wait and does not have time-sensitive business that has to be executed next week, which is the week that we're in, pausing will be a simple path forward. So we're good. We just had our meeting and we've got a month for them to figure this out, which is great. So what I would recommend is that we all wait to see what the guidance is. I believe in an informal poll, we have certainly seen people have a desire to still be remote. I know it works from a work perspective, but there are also some meetings that in person might be helpful as well. And from that perspective, I would welcome a hybrid approach to support those people that did not want to be in a public setting with other people, but obviously still wanted to join in on the conversation. To me, I think having everybody join in whatever medium keeps them safe and most comfortable would be welcomed. The only one I foresee that I would really lean towards wanting an in-person session isn't until September. That would be the Oaks Ames Memorial Hall discussion, where I would like to invite the public to join as well, so that we can continue in that dialogue and outreach to the residents. So for me, it's not an August issue. Personally, I would like the opportunity to meet in person in September for that stated purpose, but I would also want to make sure that the team could be there in whatever form they felt comfortable. Any thoughts or anything other than we're all okay with waiting and seeing and hoping that they get that vote done?
I agree with it. Excuse me, I'm on board for what you said, Tom.
Appreciate it, John.
If we do have to meet in person, I have zero interest in doing it at town hall.
Okay,
I would not be comfortable with that.
okay.
Because there's basically zero distancing there.
Not a fan of Georgian architecture?
I am a fan, just
So
I've managed to dodge COVID thus far and
Amen,
not
I hear
eager to acquire it.
yeah, so Amanda, the staff is very sensitive to that and not cramming people into the conference rooms at the town hall. So if it looks like we're heading to the next meeting and we don't have a solution, it will either be at Frothingham or at the high school in the, I guess some meetings are gonna be in the auditorium, but also the lecture hall, the Simmons Lecture Hall.
The lecture hall,
And
I would be fine with the lecture hall.
Yeah.
But yeah, our normal room is just too small for
yeah,
my comfort.
yeah.
Agreed.
And
And
poorly
then,
ventilated.
yes, and
Well,
then,
it's very ventilated now, I guess, with no windows, but hopefully that won't be the case
kind
in
of
a
and
month.
kind of not. I have plywood on 2 windows and it gets very stuffy. But Tom, also, I do think we need to plan ahead because we will be right in, starting in the hard winter. Well, not really, September 8th, but I believe you wanted to have the Oaks Ames Memorial Hall meeting in person.
Yes, and that's the September 8th meeting?
Yes, so
Yep.
we will get that room booked. If everyone feels the Simmons Lecture Hall works, we can look into booking that.
I'd like to reserve the option to consider some other alternative spaces, Stephanie, and if the
Okay,
team's
that's
okay,
fine.
I'll probably work maybe with Greg and just with also the other players who are participating. There might be some other venues that are more conducive to the discussion than the lecture hall, if that's
Sure.
okay, team. But I promise, first of all, we won't make a firm decision without me reaching out to you all. Amanda, certainly you, to make sure that you're comfortable, and I mean that sincerely. That's okay. I'll call everybody individually to make sure everybody feels comfortable. But there just may be some other locations that lend to a more conducive meeting for the topic.
Is that because you're superstitious? The last time we had a meeting in the lecture hall, the chairman resigned in the middle of the meeting.
That was a dramatic night, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, was that, oh,
That was a long time ago. Wow.
Yeah.
boy, and I forgot it was in the smaller room.
That was a classic night.
No, I didn't know about that. So, but good to know you all can break someone, I guess.
Dead man walking.
Right? No, I guess just speaking out loud, some of the thoughts that I just hadn't walked through, but maybe the Queeset House is a better location because it's right near to some of the
That's too
topics.
small
that will
for me
come
and
up.
Amanda.
Yep.
I
So-
agree, Ed.
So again, I'm just thinking out loud, but the thought is that there may be some locations that are more
Yeah,
conducive
you know
given the
what?
topic.
Tom, what's worked well for, and you can set it up in different ways, is partly why, is the cafetorium at the RO
Okay.
elementary school.
Yeah.
You have very high ceilings, you can spread it out and they'll set up the tables the way you want
Sometimes
them
there's
set up.
cookies left over.
Right.
Or sometimes we bring cookies.
That's
Sure.
that too.
Okay, so we'll be in touch, but point noted and spot on. Simmons Lecture Hall is the type of environment in terms of space that we're looking for. And we'll make sure it's bigger. And Ed, since you've expressed certainly an appropriate sensitivity as well, I'll make sure wherever I pick, I reach out to you personally as well too.
Thank you.
Of course. Items not reasonably anticipated by the chair, I have none. We have no update for an executive session update either, so I think we're good on that. I believe that's all. The only other thing, I'm sorry, there is one other thing, and it came up today. So just so that everybody knows, Greg and I are participating in a joint update with Oaks Ames Memorial Hall, with the select board and with the town, just to ensure as we move forward that we're aligned. So we know, all of us here, that we have a pretty big ask coming our way. And Greg and I have started to plant the seeds of alignment and collaboration with the other institutions and directly with Fred, And we had our first meeting today. It was a great meeting. And Stephanie, if we could just add an ongoing agenda item for updating this team on that.
On the
particular-
Oak James Memorial Hall TRC meeting?
Correct.
Sure,
Yep.
yep.
So we should just bring, Greg and I will bring any learnings, items back to the team. There isn't much. The only thing I'd say is the current update is that they're making meaningful progress on the emergency repairs. The steel trusses have been built a little bit later than hoped, but they're on their way and installation has begun and the steps are making progress, and they're still trying to hash out exactly when it will be fully completed, but progress is being made. Greg, is that a fair summary at the top level?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. There is an upcoming meeting. Certainly this is, so just for the record, this is not a CPC meeting. This is a joint meeting. So we have to be thoughtful about how many people can attend. But the next meeting, I believe there will be discussion on landscaping and external factors. And I think we can have one additional person come and keep it fair for everybody bringing people. So if you have a unique interest in attending the meeting, please send your request our way to me, and I'll accumulate all of those who may want to attend that meeting. And if there's more than one, then I'll reach out to you all and try to navigate down into one and keep it reasonable.
I just have a quick question if, before we leave. I brought this up several months ago, and I don't think I got a definitive answer in regards to the land behind Sundell's. As far as parking, I've been thinking about the parking issue quite a bit with the hall. I mean, as you know, we have a big undertaking with the hall in the next year. So I wanted to go back to it again. And I think, Stephanie, you had gave me an answer, but it wasn't a confirmation of, is this a viable option? Have maybe the Sundell's been approached? I mean, it's such a massive piece of land behind the garage as far as helping out the town common area for parking.
And are you saying, is it an option for the CPC or just for the town in general? As
Kinda-
a private, oh, go ahead.
No, kind of both, only because we're going to be investing potentially into behind the hall for, and that's going to be X amount of dollars. And then I keep leaning back to that land behind Sundell's, and maybe it should be weighed into what we're going to be doing within the next year in regards to the hall.
Sure.
Yeah, so that property was definitely considered, and I think, Greg, certainly, I believe you were part of those conversations back when Gary Anderson was the planning director. There was a lot of thought and hope that they would be willing to sell the property and that parking could be constructed there. I know Gary had some conversations. I don't know if Greg did. I had follow-up conversations, and the owner, Mr. Sundell Sr., lives in Florida and at the time was not interested in selling it. And certainly Bobby Sundell, who is the son, knows that we were interested. So the last time I spoke, which was actually several years ago now with Bobby, there was no movement on that front in selling it.
I
There
think
may
it's
have been some changes there.
Well, I know Dave Sundell is back up here at the moment, and so that's why I brought it up. And for what it's worth, as I said, the last big piece of land that we have, and it would be so beneficial to the hall and downtown. And it's several years before the conversation's been breached. So again, I just want to throw it out there again.
John, if I may, I would just say that because we did look at that a little bit, and
Recently?
Well, this was back when we did a parking study 5 years ago or so. And there are some issues with that land, which I don't think it's proper of me to go public, but there are issues that, and then just looking at the topography, that land drops off quite a bit. So when you get down to the construction of a parking lot, or probably more likely a parking structure, Parking structures are extremely expensive. And, you know, it's not as easy to put a parking lot there as one would think. We did some preliminary work with engineering, but, you know, just like there are in houses or in buildings with accessibility, you can only have slopes of a certain amount. And you have a gas station there, which would have to be removed, and I'm sure there's soils underneath there. So that's probably a very long-term process, and it's probably a rather pricey geotechnical project. So, I mean, if you're thinking like in lieu of something behind the hall, I think there's much better value for the town behind the hall from a construction standpoint, cost standpoint, than there would be. Not that that property wouldn't possibly be developed someday, but I think it probably needs to be coupled with some private capital, you know, for some type of, you know, that would make sense. But I don't know if we'd ever really see a public parking lot down there. I don't, geographically, I don't think it works.
Okay.
All right. That's all I have. I don't have an executive session. Our next meeting's Thursday, August 11th, 7 p.m. We'll be in touch in the interim, both about September meeting location. If anybody has interest in joining the next OA Oaks Ames Memorial Hall TRC. What's TRC stand for, Stephanie?
Technical Review Committee.
Perfect. For our next meeting that deals with external factors, campus, parking, so on and so forth, feel free to submit a request. We'll try to accommodate. And then I think that's all I have. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Hands and Sheedy. So we'll take a roll call vote. Al,
Benson, I.
Ed,
Aye.
Dennis,
Sheedy, aye.
Greg,
Strange eye.
John,
And Tresco, I.
Amanda,
Varela, I.
and Broussard is an aye. Thank you all for your time as always. Great to see you.
Have a nice weekend, all.
Enjoy.
Bye, everybody.